So let's begin, James, with The Room Next Door, the latest film from Pedro Almodovar. Pedro Almodovar, Spanish filmmaker.
It's like you were Pedro Almodovar.
Hey. Pedro Almodovar, Spanish filmmaker who has made films such as The Skin I Live In, All About My Mother, Pain and Glory, Parallel Mothers. And this is his first feature-length film in the English language.
Nice.
Previously, films all been in Spanish, and he, if anyone knows his work, he was one of Penelope Cruz. Basically, got a lot of her initial roles through Pedro Almodovar, and Pedro Almodovar is his signature style is big, bold uses of color. And I mean in set. I mean, people will be wearing jumpers and knits and mugs full of bold colours. There are no pastel colours in a Pedro Almodovar movie. It is all very meticulously colour blocked in that respect. The Room Next Door got a 17-minute standing ovation in Venice. If you listen to our double take from last month, we talked about the Venice Film Festival. We talked about the inflation of the applauses.
That's longer than we've been recording this episode. So
Yes.
imagine starting an applause once you press play on this podcast and still having another, 7 minutes to go?
And I think the thing about standing ovations is I think they're all actually it's all a bit of PR guff. Joker 2 got a standing ovation. Wolf's got a standing ovation. I mean, need we say more?
Check our reviews of both of those films.
So The Room Next Door. So the basic premise is thus.
Sequel to The Room.
No, not a sequel at all. So this film is entirely set in New York City and New York State. So the film follows Julianne Moore's character. So Julianne Moore plays Ingrid, a very successful writer who is at a book signing at the beginning of the film when she bumps into an old friend, and an old friend says, "Oh yeah, I'm just in the city. I'm seeing Martha in the hospital." And Ingrid says, "Martha? She's in the hospital? She's sick? I haven't spoken to her in years." And she said, "Oh yes, you must go visit her. She'd really appreciate it." Martha, of course, played by Tilda Swinton. And so Julianne Moore goes to visit Tilda Swinton in hospital, and Tilda Swinton is beset by a debilitating, crippling terminal disease. And she is having lots of kinds of treatments that she hopes will work, but is very, very ill. And these two friends reconnect, having not seen each other for a very long time. As Ingrid's
Sirens on her.
Sirens on her. As Martha's, Tilda Swinton's illness progresses, it brings Julianne Moore into her life more and more, and sort of asks her to fulfill a role relating to Martha's illness and kind of the end of Martha's life ahead of it. Tilda Swinton basically says, "Look, I know I haven't got long left. What I would like is to actually end my life in a respectable way." And I would like someone to not be with me, but be in the room next door. I just want to know someone is there with me. And that's the kind of premise of that. That's not a spoiler to say that this is kind of a film about a sister dying and, sort of euthanasia, but that's the kind of the framework. So most of the film takes place in New York City, and then the sort of second half takes place in this kind of Airbnb upstate, which is amazing. I mean, let's just talk about...
Are they ever not?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the film, I should probably say, occupies the complete metropolitan elite of New York City, where every interior and every kitchen and every domestic setting is fabulous. This Airbnb they go to has what they think might be a real Edward Hopper painting hanging on the wall. There are... Again, the color detail in Almodovar's films is just really interesting. I like color. I think it's so interesting. And they, like, the lounges of this Airbnb are meticulously colored so that when Julianne Moore leans back in her purple jumper on the green lounger with her yellow Pantone mug, it all just creates this kind of symmetry. Nice. And that's the kind of main drama. John Turturro also comes in and out of the drama royal, but it's a very, very small film. So that's it. It's a Pedro Almodovar movie about two old friends reconnecting with the spectre of death and Tilda Swinton's illness behind it. Like I said, very great buzz coming out of Venice for this. I went to see this at the last sort of tail end of the London Film Festival, and yeah, it's unfortunately a bit disappointing.
Oh,
Here's the really strange thing about it is that you have great work from all the actors. I mean, would you expect any less from Julianne Moore and Tilda Swinton and John Turturro to do anything other than great work? But the dialogue is very, very strange. I can only describe it as dialogue that sounds like it has been translated. And I'm not.
Wow.
I don't mean that to be patronizing to Pedro Almodovar in having written this for the first time in the English language. That may not be the case, but nonetheless, it has that really strange, uncanny quality where the words carry emotional truth and the words kind of bring the story forward, but they just don't fit and sound correct in a sentence. And as a result, it's really distracting and quite hard to engage in the sort of emotional drama that's happening.
It's very common in gaming from, I'd say, over 10 years ago when the industry was a little bit less globalized. If you had Japanese language translations or even like Canadian French, I have a couple of games in mind, you really felt that. And it was like, oh, the medium is not quite there, but it was a translation thing. And I know exactly that quality you're talking
it's
about.
like, even it's a subconscious reaction in a way, because you just know that's not how sentences flow or sound in the English language. And that's a real shame. That's the main drawback. And especially in the first act, there are some real exposition-heavy sentences that Tilda Swinton has to go through. And their interaction, because again, it's such an emotional film really at its heart, about friends reconnecting and it's about death. You really think that should speak for itself, but it's kind of wrapped in this very strange language. The thing is about Almodovar movies is that, in their defense, is that they're always slight melodramas. So the slightly arch, stiff style of the dialogue kind of works sometimes, but it actually, I think, it holds the whole film back. There's one particular scene where Julianne Moore has lunch with John Turturro, and I was like, I realised why the scene wasn't working halfway through, because their dialogue didn't match. I don't mean like ADR and syncing. I mean, John Turturro would say something and Julianne Moore would react, but she would be reacting in a way that it's almost like she heard him say something else. There's no pairing. It's not like, it's basically two different, it almost felt like two different scenes stitched together. They weren't having a dialogue.
Or like All the Money in the World, like half the film was shot a year apart with a different actor.
So it literally felt like they were just saying lines at each other. And it kind of, I thought a film with this subject matter, and like I said, with these actors, would get to the end and kind of deliver an emotional punch. It doesn't for me. There is a very late in the day casting decision that I think doesn't work and is misjudged. And when it happened, most of the people in my auditorium burst out laughing.
Really?
And I'm like, that's
you
a
can't
problem.
reveal that. Would it be a spoiler to reveal?
It would be a spoiler to
Okay,
reveal,
fine.
but they could have so not done it.
Okay.
But then they kind of imply that they're going to do it earlier on in the film, and then when they do it, I was like, oh, why didn't you just not? Why couldn't you? It's to do with the casting of it's to do with the casting of Tilda Swinton's daughter's character, Tilda Swinton's character's daughter.
Okay.
And I thought they were going to, Tilda Swinton has a real life daughter who is an actor. Again, I thought they could have gone that route. Anyway, so it's a lesser Almodovar film. Okay. Please go check out his other stuff. Skin I Live In, I think is great. I also really like Pain and Glory. But his first foray into the English language, I thought was a bit arch, a bit held back by a strangely sounding script. Some lovely reviews of it coming out of the festival. Good for it. And yes, when I say I want to say they're good performances, I would actually just say that Tilda Swinton and Julianne Moore are trying their very hardest to make this dialogue work in the most natural way, which
That's
also
all
makes it
good
seem
actors
uncanny.
Try to do.
Yeah.
That's a shame, because those two actors are a huge draw for me, and I think like coming off of May, December, I'm a big fan of Julianne Moore. Tilda Swinton, always an interesting screen presence, whatever she does.
Yeah.
So I was hoping to sort of ride the coattails of that into something here, but that's a shame to hear
Yeah.
that. Always a shame to hear if a film doesn't quite carry, but I know exactly that feeling of something that has been translated quite imperfectly into the English language, and it's hard.
And another example of how I wasn't properly engaged with it is that I was looking at Tilda Swinton's character's kitchen, which is, again, amazingly colour blocked. No pastel colours, again, a bright lime green counter with an orange strip around. I'm already looking at that. And then I was looking at the mason jars on her shelf, and they were all empty. And I was like...
it's a hollow film,
it's
not real.
No one lives here.
Cardboard.
This is... it just broke the illusion.
Yeah. It's like when I said that the film Anyone But You felt empty.
Yes.
It didn't feel like there were actually people there.
Yeah.
It was an Airbnb film. Not to compare the two, but there is a feel. I know when you watch other films that do feel full and real, you realise that that film was empty. It didn't quite capture the feeling of needs a housewarming. That film.
A bit of life. Anyway, that was The Room Next Door. It's out on the 25th here in the UK, and I do think it's going to be slightly pushed a little bit for the Oscars race. I wouldn't be surprised if they're going to try and push Tilda and Julianne for acting credentials. I thought it was a little bit of a disappointment, but there you go.